Have you ever, like, just completely stumbled into one of those totally forgotten, totally fascinating corners of the internet?
Oh, absolutely. The kind of place that feels less like a normal website and more like you just walked straight into the organized brain of a mad scientist.
Yes, exactly that. And um, that is exactly the kind of space we are plunging into for today's deep dive.
It really is. It's a wildly specific space.
Right, so we're looking at a single dispatch from April 14th, 2026. It's written by a guy who just calls himself an old software plumber named Ang.
Which is a great title, by the way.
It really is. And this post is on his site, kianmeng.org. We're going to, unpack this highly technical coding problem he's trying to solve. But more importantly, we're zooming out.
Yeah, because the problem itself is just the tip of the iceberg.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We need to look at the staggering volume of content he has surrounding this one little post. I mean, this isn't just about code. It's really an exploration of, like, extreme documentation.
And lifelong learning, really. What it actually looks like when a human being decides to catalog literally every single thing they tinker with.
So let's set the stage. The post is titled Notes on Haskell Programming Part 108, which just Part 108 is crazy to begin with.
Right, and the subtitle is Normalizing Header Levels in the Absence of Volumes.
So, okay, what exactly is Ang trying to fix here? Because he's working in Haskell, which is a programming language, and he's trying to parse documents to automatically build a table of contents.
Right, so to a human, a table of contents is just, well, it's intuitive. You look at a book, you see a bold chapter title, and you know, okay, that goes in the index.
Yeah, I see chapter 1, I write chapter 1. Simple.
Exactly. But for Ang's program, there's a structural failure happening. He notices that when his code is parsing these headers, if the original document happens to be missing volume headers, like, say, volume 1 or volume 2, the system just totally defaults the chapter headers down to level 2.
Wait, really? Why would it bump them down?
Because computers possess absolutely zero intuition. I mean, they just follow the rigid hierarchy they were handed.
Oh, so if volume is level 1 and chapter is level 2, it just blindly follows that rule.
Exactly. If the level 1 volume header is just missing from the source text, the system doesn't dynamically think, oh, I should promote the chapter to take its place. It just rigidly leaves it indented at level 2.
I keep thinking about this like organizing a physical filing cabinet.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good way to look at it.
Like, imagine your filing system says you must have a main category folder that's the volume, and then inside that you have subcategory folders, which are the chapters.
Right.
But if someone hands you a stack of just subcategory folders with no main category and you'd shove them into the drawer anyway, your whole filing cabinet's index looks totally broken. Everything is indented weirdly.
That is the perfect mental model. Your drawer is a mess.
So Ang's solution is to write this function that forcibly promotes all those orphaned chapter headers up to level 1.
Exactly. He just promotes them. And he does the same thing for the front matter, like prefaces and the back matter, so everything actually aligns correctly in the final output.
But I have to ask, isn't he kind of just, like, putting a Band-Aid on a much bigger problem?
How do you mean?
Well, if the volume is missing in the source document, shouldn't he just go fix the book itself? Why hack the table of contents code just to hide the error?
And that right there is exactly why Ang calls himself a software plumber.
Because he's dealing with leaky pipes.
Sort of, yeah. It's the eternal dilemma of the plumber. In an ideal world, the water source is perfectly pure, the book is perfectly formatted, but in the real world, you don't always control the source data.
That makes sense. I mean, he might be parsing, what, thousands of documents from some third party.
Exactly. You can't just go manually edit every single original manuscript. When unpredictable human data meets rigid code, the plumber has to step in and build pipes that handle the anomalies. He has to normalize the flow.
Okay, so you just have to handle the mess as it arrives. Which I guess leads us to how he actually writes this fix. Because, man, this is where the post gets incredibly dense.
Oh, yeah. Haskell is not for the faint of heart.
No kidding. He writes this function called promoteHeaders, and he explicitly states that he's using an idiomatic Haskell coding approach.
Right, the idiomatic way.
And he's throwing out all these terms like using guard and the pipe operator and function header, pattern matching.
Yeah, Haskell is notoriously tricky for beginners because of this idiomatic approach. It doesn't read like plain English like Python or Ruby might try to.
Reading that section felt like trying to decipher an ancient alien language, honestly. Can we break down those mechanisms? Like, what is pattern matching?
Sure, so imagine a massive coin sorting machine, right? You dump a whole bucket of loose change into a funnel.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
And as the coins slide down, they fall through specific holes based entirely on their physical shape and size. Quarters drop here, dimes drop there.
Instantly sorted.
Exactly. Pattern matching in Haskell works the exact same way. Instead of writing out these really wordy instructions that say, hey, if this data looks like a chapter, do this, but if it's a volume, do that, the code just acts as a physical filter.
Oh, wow. So it automatically routes the incoming data just based on its, structural shape.
You got it. It sorts the data instantly without needing some middleman constantly asking what the data is.
That is really elegant.
Oh,
Okay, what about this guard tool he talks about?
Think of guard as like a bouncer at a club checking your ID.
Oh, okay.
The data comes down the pipe and the bouncer steps in and says, wait, is this header currently at level 2? Yes. Cool, you can pass. No, you are rejected. Go away.
So it's just this ruthlessly efficient way to stop the wrong data from flowing into the function.
Exactly. And then you brought up the pipe operator, which is literally that vertical line symbol on your keyboard.
Right, the straight line.
That acts like the conveyor belt connecting all these stations together. It takes the output from one function and just feeds it directly into the next one.
Without needing to, store it in a temporary folder or variable first?
Precisely. No temporary storage needed.
Okay, so if we put it all together, the data hits the coin sorting machine, the pattern matching, then it travels down the conveyor belt, the pipe operator, and then it gets checked by the bouncer, which is the guard.
That's the idiomatic Haskell approach in a nutshell. An incredibly elegant, automated assembly line.
He contrasts this beautiful native way of speaking Haskell with what he calls a, quote, more imperative wordy approach, basically implying his way is the superior hyper-efficient method.
Oh, he's very clearly proud of how dense and efficient this code is.
But then he makes this massive, super surprising confession right after that.
The post-processing decision.
Yes, because he points out there are basically two places you could theoretically deploy this fix. You could do it during the parsing phase, like when the program is initially reading the document for the very first time.
Right at the very beginning of the process.
Or you could do it in post-processing, which is after the document has already been fully read and you're just, cleaning up the final text.
And he chooses post-processing. He actually writes, I've opted for the later approach due to the simplicity.
I really have to call him out here because he just spent a whole paragraph praising this elegant, idiomatic assembly line.
I know, it feels like a contradiction.
It does. And then he admits he opted for a simpler, admittedly less ideal workaround. He even leaves a little note saying he'll explore the proper parsing approach, quote, in the coming future.
Which is programmer speak for probably never.
Exactly. So is this veteran programmer just taking the easy way out because he got lazy?
I wouldn't call it lazy at all. Think about it like this. Fixing this during the parsing phase is like finding a typo in a manuscript and correcting it before it even goes to the printing press.
Which is the fundamentally correct place to do it.
Right. But fixing it in post-processing, which is what Ang chose, is like letting the whole book print with the error and then going through every single physical copy with a black Sharpie to fix the typo afterward.
But wait, that sounds terribly inefficient. Why on earth would a master programmer intentionally choose the Sharpie method?
Because a novice programmer will obsess over theoretical perfection, right? They'll spend 3 weeks trying to rewrite the foundational printing press engine just to fix one minor formatting bug.
And in the process, they probably accidentally break the binding machine or something.
Exactly. Ang knows what the perfect solution is, but he's practicing a concept we should probably call the plumber's principle. Perfection is the enemy of a functioning pipe.
The plumber's principle. I actually really like that.
He prioritizes getting the water flowing today, he acknowledges his technical debt, he documents it publicly so he doesn't forget, and he just moves on.
Because at the end of the day, the table of contents works. The user is happy.
Right. He chose the Sharpie method because the ultimate goal is a functioning system, not some museum piece of perfectly parsed code.
That pragmatic choice, just picking the good enough fix so he can move on. That is the exact mindset you would need to maintain the sheer scale of his output.
Absolutely. Because if he spent weeks perfecting that one parsing engine, he never would have had the time to write the other 729 posts he published that year.
Which brings us to the scale of qianmeng.org. This is where this deep dive really shifts from a coding lesson into, a study of human endurance.
Let's look at the metadata surrounding this one specific April 14th post.
Okay, so the Haskell post we just talked about was part 108. In that single month of April 2026, he publishes parts 97 through 109 of his Haskell notes alone.
Just in 1 month.
Just in April. But that is just a fraction of his output. On the exact same day, April 14th, right next to this incredibly dense breakdown of Haskell pattern matching, there is a post titled Notes on Gardening Part 867.
Part 867.
Yeah, and it's about propagating a plant called the blue days.
And if you look just a few days prior to that, Part 865 was a detailed guide on the firecracker plant.
It's just wild. And interspersed with all the gardening and the coding, he drops Notes on Fish Keeping Part 233, which is all about designing a cave for a specific dwarf cichlid called an epistogramma.
And the day before that, Part 232 was on managing bioloads in the aquarium.
He maintains detailed spawn logs for betta fishes. He has ongoing, concurrent series on dieting, photography, electric guitars, home improvement, and meditation.
While also writing deep technical notes on Python, Rust, artificial intelligence, and typesetting.
I mean, it really forces you to reevaluate how we consume and index information.
Yeah.
Most of us just experience this barrage of random information every day.
Oh, totally. You solve a bizarre spreadsheet error at work, then you figure out how to keep your basil plant alive at home, then you troubleshoot a weird noise your car is making.
Right, and then, like 3 months later, the car makes the exact same noise, the basil dies, and we've completely forgotten how we solved it the first time.
The information just evaporates.
It really does. I am terribly guilty of this. I have an absolute graveyard of untitled sticky notes and bookmarked browser tabs that I swear I'm going to look at, and I never, ever.
We all do, but look at Ang's archive list from the source material. In 2025, he published exactly 730 posts.
Wow.
In 2024, 732 posts. 2023, 730 posts.
That is literally 2 detailed, highly technical notes a day, every single day.
And the archive stretches all the way back continuously to 2011. He simply does not suffer from that evaporation we were talking about.
But how does someone sustain that without just completely burning out? I mean, writing multiple highly detailed essays a day on everything from Elixir programming to beta fish spawn logs, that sounds like a recipe for breakdown.
Well, he avoids burnout because this project isn't a performance for an audience, it's a mechanism for his own cognition.
What do you mean by that?
He's utilizing the framework of a digital garden. He's literally externalizing his brain's table of contents onto the web. When he figures out how the golden penda tree grows, he normalizes that data by writing it down.
Oh, when he refactors a function in Haskell, he normalizes it.
Exactly.
He is applying the exact same normalization process he used on his code to his own lived experience. He isn't just a software plumber. He's plumbing his own mind to make sure none of his daily discoveries get lost in the pipes.
And treating all knowledge with equal weight like that is a very powerful framework most people compartmentalize.
Yeah, they think their professional skills like coding are worthy of rigorous documentation, but their hobbies, like gardening, are just frivolous.
Right, but Ang treats the hydroponic algae and the Haskell function with the exact same level of respect. He gives each a part number, a date, and a public URL.
Which, okay, that brings up the most fascinating question of all. Why make the URL public?
That is the big question.
If this is really just an external hard drive for his own curiosities, why not just keep it in a private journal on his desktop? Why put it on the internet?
The answer to that lies in his About section, specifically his Do Support list. He describes his nightly routine as tinkering with free Libre and open source software, which is commonly known as FLOSS.
Right, and his Do Support list specifically highlights organizations like the Electronic Frontier Foundation, the Free Software Foundation, the Software Freedom Conservancy, the Tor Project, and Wikipedia.
Now, we're just reporting what's in the source material here, but that list provides a very clear ideological map of how he views the digital world.
How so?
Well, these organizations basically operate on the belief that information, privacy, and software tools should be open, accessible, and free from restrictive centralized control. They view knowledge fundamentally as a public good.
Oh, I see. So by publishing his personal notes publicly, he is actively living that ethos.
Exactly.
He isn't hoarding his solutions behind a paywall or keeping them perfectly private. He's tossing his newly crafted plumbing fixtures back into the public square for anyone else who might have a leaky pipe.
And there's a massive cognitive benefit to doing this publicly, too. When you document your learning out in the open, even if you're just writing for a hypothetical audience, it forces a level of clarity that private journaling rarely achieves.
That makes total sense. You actually have to explain the mechanism. You can't just write, fix the bug in a private note. You have to write down exactly how the coin sorting machine and the bouncer work together.
It's the difference between thinking you know how a magic trick works in your head and actually having to perform it on stage.
Oh, that's a great way to put it. Writing it down publicly is performing the trick. It reveals whether you actually understand the underlying mechanics or if you were just guessing.
Right. But it's important to note, he pairs this public performance with a very grounded disclaimer.
Yeah, he clearly states the content is for informational purposes only. He guarantees no accuracy, accepts no liability, and explicitly says it doesn't represent his employers.
And that disclaimer is the essence of the open source mindset. He's telling the internet, hey, I am not presenting myself as an infallible authority. I'm just sharing my notes.
Take my thought process, learn from it, but you're responsible for how you implement it in your own systems.
Exactly. It removes the pressure of perfection.
It really makes you wonder about your own habits, doesn't it? Like, if you knew you were going to publish a public note about the specific problem you're struggling with at work today, how would that change your approach to solving it?
Would you settle for a messy hack, or would you try to build a more elegant system so you could explain it clearly?
The transparency really is the true value of KeonMeng.org. Eng didn't hide the fact that his promoteHeaders code used a less-than-ideal post-processing shortcut.
No, he documented his technical debt for the whole world to see. He presented the messy, ongoing reality of lifelong learning.
We started today staring at a micro-problem. We looked at a glitch where missing volume headers caused chapters to indent incorrectly in a table of contents.
And we learned how an old software plumber built a pipeline of pattern matching and guards to fix the flow.
We explored the plumber's principle, learning that sometimes the Sharpie method in post-processing is actually the right choice if it keeps the system running.
But the real revelation was zooming out, right? Seeing the macro universe that the code lived inside.
A 15-year, relentlessly maintained digital garden. 2 posts a day, every single day. A beautifully categorized index of a human life, spanning everything from dwarf Seachlid cave designs to the open-source philosophy of Wikipedia.
It proves that greatness in learning isn't necessarily about massive, sporadic leaps of genius. It's about the daily, compounding interest of taking notes.
You don't need to understand idiomatic Haskell, and you certainly don't need to propagate a firecracker plant to apply his methodology to your own life.
It's really just about being the plumber of your own mind.
It's about catching those brilliant little solutions you invent every day before they just drain away into forgotten memory. Eng has built a staggering monument to the mundane, and by treating the mundane with such immense respect, he made it extraordinary.
A monument to the mundane, that captures it perfectly.
Which leaves us with a final, provocative thought to carry into your day. Imagine adopting Eng's framework right now. Think about the eclectic mix of hobbies, work puzzles, and random curiosities bouncing around your brain today.
Just waiting to be written down.
If you sat down tonight and named your very first entry, Notes on My Life, Part 1.
Taking that first step is always the hardest, you know?
It really is. But if you embrace the plumber's principle, completely abandoned perfection, and just focused on keeping the daily flow of information moving, what part number would you realistically be on by this time next year?
That's a great question.
And more importantly, what kind of insights, patterns, and surprising connections might you uncover if you actually had the courage to hit publish and step into that beautifully organized room of your own mind? Something to chew on the next time you stumble into a forgotten corner of the internet.